reading your book and hearing the stories about child abuse pediatricians, that was a concept that I found interesting. And it seems like there's sort of an industrial complex around child abuse now, where a system was set up for a legitimate need. Of course, we want to make sure that children who have something happen are safe.
Right.
But now the system can get profit by finding people who they deem as unsafe. And so they want to find more profit. They want to build more cases. Cases against real abusers are difficult, and cases against parents who are ignorant of the system might be easier. So, ha- is that an accurate assessment that there's a sort of industrial complex going on here? And how does child abuse pediatricians, how does it actually function in the system?
Okay, so these are my theories, having
Sure.
been in this area for quite some time and spent a lot of time writing this book and reading articles and having just won a major victory in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and seeing what's going on there. So there are about 350 child abuse pediatricians in the country. So let's educate the people listening about medicine. Doctors finish medical school and then they pick an area, or during that time they pick an area, a specialty that they're going into. It might be pediatrics, it might be ear, nose, and throat, it might be allergy, it might be a surgeon. And so then doctors get additional training in that particular area. And then once they finish that, they take tests to become board certified. So a pediatrician, after they finish the medical school, does 2 years of residency and in pediatrics. So they go to a hospital and they're part of the pediatric team at the hospital, and they have to do that for 2 years, and then they pass a test, hopefully they don't fail, and they become board certified. Then other specialties require much more training. So for example, a genetic metabolicist requires quite a bit more training than a pediatrician. And some doctors then take trainings in particular areas. So if you want to be a surgeon, then maybe you want to become a pediatric surgeon, and maybe you want to be a pediatric heart surgeon. So that requires really a lot of training beyond just a 2 year residency for pediatrics. So, 350 pediatricians have become board certified as child abuse pediatricians. That does not mean that they have any training other than an exposure. Okay, so for example, me, I'm a lawyer, right? So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
a tax lawyer. I mean, I understand tax law, the basic tax law, but I'm not a tax lawyer. So, but I've been exposed to tax law through courses and so forth, right? So, if you have a child who has an autoimmune condition, for example, you would be taking your child to a rheumatologist. Child abuse pediatrician doesn't do a residency in rheumatology. They have some brief understanding of rheumatology, and as a pediatrician, your typical pediatrician would refer the patient to a rheumatologist. So if your child had an autoimmune condition, your child would be referred to a rheumatologist. Okay? So pediatricians in the hierarchy of medicine are really perceived as being on one of the lower rungs, even though families perceive pediatricians as being really important because those are the doctors who see their children all the time. But in the hierarchy of hospital medicine, pediatricians are not considered to be one of the more important specialties. Who are the most important? Surgeons. Surgeons are the most important. They generate more income, their training is more significant, and then within surgeons, there are general surgeons, there are heart surgeons, there are brain surgeons. So you have this whole hierarchy in medicine. Pediatricians are not, they're kind of on the bottom rung. So if these 350 individuals become board certified in pediatrics, suddenly, in terms of their own personal self-worth or whatever I would describe, they suddenly have a great deal of control over other specialists who are far more qualified and well trained than they are. Because suddenly those child abuse pediatricians are deciding whether the rheumatologist is making good decisions or not. So there was a recent article written by a group of child abuse pediatricians from Rady Hospital in San Diego, Rady Children's Hospital. And those child abuse pediatricians believe that every hospital should have a medical, I forget what they titled it. It's basically a hit squad where they are going to oversee every aspect of a complex child's medical care. And they will decide whether that child should be getting the treatment and the medication that the experts have prescribed. So there is an ego piece there. Secondly, when a medically complex child goes into a hospital system, which then that child abuse pediatrician decides. So let me back up and say, a lot of times medically complex kids who have all these different conditions, they have to go, it's not every hospital has everything. So your child might, depending on where you live, might have to see experts at several different hospitals, because if you're just in a place that has a regional hospital, so for example, I'm in Maine, and you probably would have to take children with specific conditions to Boston to get certain kinds of care, right? So what happens is that if a child were to go into a hospital here and a child abuse pediatrician decided that they didn't like the care that was happening, maybe in Boston, maybe in New York, wherever it is happening, then that child abuse pediatrician not only causes the state to gain custody of the child, but to cut off all the other medical care the child was receiving and consolidate it within its own hospital system. So this is exactly what I saw happening in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where the child abuse pediatrician there, when a child with a medical complex condition ends up at her hospital for one reason or another, she will cut off the care being offered by Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, by the Cleveland Clinic, and say all the care has to happen within her hospital, which obviously generates income for them.
Yeah, it sounds like a very vicious way to steal business from another competitor.
I see it that way, and I'm sorry to have had to reach that conclusion, but I do see it that way.
Well, your mention of the article, a discipline writing an article saying that their discipline should have more power, right?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, that is it in a nutshell. The difficulty is that I don't think that the specialists at the hospitals recognize this is happening, because I think they are truly so brilliant and focused on caring for their patients that it's when this happens to one of their patients, they tend to think it's sort of a one patient problem. They don't really see the bigger picture, which is what I see, which is that it's happening again and again, or what you've identified, which is an article that is written as if we're really we're on the child's side and this is why we need to be involved in these meetings. But actually, what they're saying is, we want more power and this is how we're going to get it.
Yeah, it's a classic technique to gain power, to take a real problem, child abuse, and say, well, to fight this serious problem, we need all the power in the world to do it. We need more power. And it's also a problem that can't be solved the way that they're going about it. So I don't know that child abuse can be removed entirely from the world, even if these people had absolute power. And the way that they're going about it, it sounds like they're not even necessarily focused on child abuse as much as expanding their own system. So,
I think that's very true.
yeah, this is a very classic um, problem around power, but it sounds like because it's being viewed through the lens of medicine, people don't see
And
the
kids
power dynamics at work.
and protecting children.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm batting my eyes intentionally. Like,
Yes.
we're really trying to do this for the kids. No, you're
Right.
not. You're trying to do it because you want to be in charge. You want to elevate yourself. You want to be telling all the different specialists what they can and cannot do. And if children end up being hurt as a result of that, too bad. Because what you will never find in any of these articles written by these child abuse pediatricians who talk about separating the children from the parents is and the mothers who exaggerate and so forth and so on, you will never find a discussion of the trauma that they inflict on those children or the families or the parents. It is not there ever.